the IB chemistry. Okay, so let's first start with the. In this way, I'm going to talk about both IB chemistry SL and HL, but the strategy for SL and HL are going to be significantly different in terms of study. So we are going to first start with the SL. So let's first talk about what is chemistry. I mean IB chemistry. In the IB chemistry, it is a course where you are expected to learn about 15 modules in total, so that you can gain a better understanding about every day our life of chemistry every day. In the SL, the topics are relatively simple. There's only 9 modules. But for HL, it's harder. It has, I think it's about 15 or 16 or 17, I don't remember. It's quite long, 16 or 17 module. So let's first talk about what are some strategies I find. Basically, what's the first thing I will suggest you to do is that you should, before you start doing problem, you need to remember all the prompts well. This is especially important for SL because for the SL you need to, because for SL the topics is limited, so that it is more likely that the same concept will be included in multiple questions. In terms of the specific chapters, the most difficult chapter I would say it's going to be, I mean, to learn the stoichiometric, I would say that you will need to do a lot of problems because stoichiometric not only involves in like it's will be applying every unit. For the atomic theory and the second and third units and fourth unit, those ones are more similar to reciting. So I would suggest you to like recite those concepts well because like those problems are usually going to be multiple choice or free response problem that requires to write a short response for the answer. So another thing that you need to notice in chapter 2, 3, 4, you need to remember that. Let me think. Sorry, 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 sorry. You need to remember that. You need to think about the possible problems for chemistry. Because they will usually ask you real life applications to the question. So not only need to remember those concepts, but you need to know how to apply them in real life. For chapter 5 and 6, it's more similar to 2, 3, 4. It's about just practicing the calculations. So for example, the chapter 6 involves in collision theories. So that you have to like remember what each collision theory is pretty well, because if you do that, like I would say 1/3 of the problem are on collision theory, so it's fine. Chapter 5 is more of a calculation based question, so I would suggest you need to like make sure you remember them. For 7 and 8, it's more calculation. 7 is more calculation based. 8 is more concept based. So in this case, you will need to remember 7 well. But for 8, you need to for 7 you need to practice a lot of problem. But for 8, you need to remember to recite those concepts well. A second suggestion I would do is like do experiments because the experiments allow you to have a real life understanding about the concepts. This is also something that your teacher will do, right? Yeah, this is also something that you will do. You will do. So just remember that you need to. If you don't want to do what I call experiments, you can also look at the simulations of each concepts online. Yeah, the simulation of each concept online. Uh, Additionally, for the HL, it's a similar way of SL, except for the HL, you need to focus on more concepts. So you just need to apply for the SL, the concept I told you for SL, but use them for but also apply them for HL as well. But however, a thing that is important is that HL has much more content than SL, and it will have more little time for you to prepare. So that in this case, you may need to selectively prepare for the prompt that you are you are more familiar with, and you can just choose to give up one or two prompts that is less likely to be tested. Yeah. And in terms of the doing problems, what I would suggest, usually there are two ways for you to do problem. One of them is to maximize speed and minimize accuracy. The other way is maximize accuracy but minimize speed. Overall, I would suggest the second way, maximize speed and minimize accuracy. So basically, it's because like the actual time you have in the test is very condensed, 30 minutes to 30 questions. If you focus on accuracy, first of all, you may not able to get sufficient problems. You may not be able to what's that called complete sufficient problems. And second of all, those problems that you hope that you could maximize for accuracy are you cannot guarantee that they are correct. I'm going to say it again. You cannot guarantee that you are correct. This is because this is because this is because that um, the teacher's marking is very subjective. For example, you may consider, for example, so there are some answers that you might be considered as right, but that they may not be like you think that it is right, but your teacher may not mark it as right. So that's what I think. Mm. What should I say? Oh, now let's talk about the intern. And the third suggestion I would say that for the um, for the multiplication, you need to practice the skill about doing the you need to multiple you need to practice the skill of not being getting distracted by the selection by the other wrong choices. For example, sometimes in the multiple choice section of the IB chemistry, there's often going to be very confusing choices, and those choices going to be are going to impact their memory, so that it will distract your memory and causes you to have a wrong understanding of some concepts. That's what I think here. That's what I think. Yeah. So you need to practice that as well. And additionally, for the what's that called for the multiple choice parts, you also need to maximize. You also need to like do it as fast as possible. The final piece of suggestion I will give is that you need to um you need to like focus on more on the parts that you don't understand because those parts is sometimes are going to be important. Yeah. So now let's talk about the internal assessment, how to ace the internal assessment. Basically, the internal assessment of IB Chem is that you are required to complete a or what's that called um, experiment paper of 12 pages maximum. So what I would suggest is first of all, you can try in terms of the difficulty. I would say it depends on you. Sometimes you could choose a more difficult one, but sometimes you could choose a simpler one. But I would say that the content difference is actually not going to be impact that much to your project. The thing that is going to impact a lot is how you present them. Like what's, for example, your experimental process. How concise you write the experimental process? Do you miss anything? Do you neglect anything? And for the background information, how well do they cover the concepts? How well do they cover the calculations in the experiment? How well do they cover the entire cover? I mean, how well are they included in the IB IB textbook? So, compared to math, which math because I said in the previous video, math HL there's one part that is focused on like assessing how good, how difficult it is, how complex it is. how complex your computation is. There's no such thing. I mean, there is such things in chemistry as well, but it's count. But what the percentage it counts is significantly less than the mathematics one. So first of all, I would say that the content is less matter. I mean, the difficulty is less matter. The second thing that you need to recognize is how you need to make sure that your parts are all there. For example, you can't neglect the safety and environmental concerns, and you can't neglect the experimental process or something. And the random error and systematic error, those things you could also not remember. You should also like remember. Uh, a third thing that you need to that reminds you is uh, a third thing that you need to remember is that for IA is that you need to make sure of the uncertainty propagation. Sometimes people will forget about the uncertainty, which is definitely going to be very crucial. What I call impactful. So you need to not only include the uncertainty, but you also need to remember to justify them. Remember, justification on the uncertainty is very crucial. And finally, the fourth thing is that you remember to perform analysis on your data. Basically, you need to compare your literature value to other values, experimental values. Yeah. So I think those are the four main concepts of IB chemistry. IB chemistry, which I hope you will definitely learn it a lot. And yeah, see you tomorrow. I mean, see you in the next video. Bye bye.